Hi, I'm Joe Wells, and I want to welcome you back to the Hey Joe Show. Today I'm joined by Toby and Sharon as we discuss secrets to 50 years of marriage. From time to time, I have the opportunity to visit with and talk with some very dear friends, and that's who I want to introduce you today to. Toby and Sharon are some of Aaron and I are good friends from our time that we spent in Florida, and I'm interviewing them today, obviously in a season of individuals who've been married 50 plus years. Because Toby and Sharon, over the years, they have stood out to me as individuals who, number one, are deeply committed to the Lord and deeply committed to one another. But on top of that, they also, we can see their parenting style reflected in their children. And that was always a big deal for us, a big attraction for us. And so today, as we continue in this season dealing with secrets to 50 years of marriage, I invite you to listen in as Toby and Sharon talk about the importance of their wedding vows, what attracted them to each other first, and also what lessons they have learned along the way that maybe will be a blessing to other people.
I had the opportunity to learn a lot about you both, but just so that this audience will be able to meet you and to know some of your story, tell us about how it began, when you met, how old you were, all those great little details that you put in the first one. Anything you want to share, because I want you to kind of explain it to them, because you guys have been married again how long?
54 years, 6 months, and 27 days.
Oh, so a long time, in 3 minutes too. That's what we said, right? The first time. So tell me how it started. I'm really curious. We're curious. How did it all start?
Well, we moved to Macon when I was 15 years old. My dad worked for the railroad, and ran across her dad, who also worked for the railroad, and found out that we were all members of the church. And we attended one congregation in Macon, and she attended another one. So he invited us to come visit. And one Wednesday night we did. It was in the spring of 1966. I was 15 years old, and she had just turned 16. So we met on the porch at that little congregation there in Macon, and our parents were there, and brothers and sisters, and all that. And we gave each other a look over, but neither one of us actually said anything.
Yeah, I thought it was so funny, Sharon, I think it was like you didn't know what to say, but you did notice something about Mr. Toby. What did you notice about him that first time?
Right. He had the most beautiful, sparkling blue eyes that I'd ever seen. He was tall, taller than me. And when you're 15 and 16 years old, sometimes the girls could be a little taller than the guys. So that was important. But it was just a casual meeting and meeting new friends. And I didn't, other than that, that's all I noticed about him.
So the eyes. So be careful. That's what you're saying.
That's
Those
right.
who aren't married is be careful of looking in the eyes.
Yeah. Another thing about her, she had big green eyes and blonde hair, and that was something that was attractive to me. I would have died of embarrassment if I'd said anything to her about it, but I was too shy to even really speak to her, and that was my big holdback. And something we didn't talk about this morning when we talked, but when we moved to Macon, instead of schools being segregated by race, they were segregated by sex. These were public schools. So after junior high and senior high, you had boys' school and girls' school. Their school was across the street from ours. And so for me, it really hampered any kind of social life that I had any dreams of following up on.
Yeah, it did. So the church, then y'all's gathering at the church and youth events and congregational events is where y'all started then.
Right. And it didn't start for a couple of years later after that. As we said this morning, I'd been away at Alabama Christian for my first year of school. And then that summer, with youth groups and different things going on, we finally decided, hey, we're going to go out by ourselves.
It was about time. And how long did y'all date before you got married? I couldn't remember what you said.
Well, we started summer of 69 and we got married summer of 70.
Okay, so about a year. And
About a year.
here you are to show that, even in that short period of time, marriages can last.
Yeah.
So here's the deal then. What's the secret, right? That's what we're here for. That's what this video is about. That's what this class is about, is give me 3 secrets. I would love for both of you to give some, but what are 3 secrets to 50 plus years of marriage?
Well, as we talked this morning, about going through different trials and tribulations with life, that we each made a vow to each other, and we have both, maintained that vow. We made it before God and our families and to each other, and that was something that I am determined to honor forever.
So keep your vow, be determined to honor that vow.
Right.
What would you say, Miss Sharon, if you could give 1 or 2 pieces of advice?
Well, I didn't talk about this morning, but I think that when you meet that right person, and I really truly believe that God was pushing us together, because I knew a lot of people in Macon. I had grown up my life there, and I had dated several guys, but of everybody that I knew, he was the only one that met my hopes for what I wanted my husband to be. And there was just something that just clicked between us when we began to date and go places together, learn about each other. We learned that we had a similar background, and that similar background was being a member of the church. There were things that we knew that we had in common. We knew that our goals would be in common. And as we were trying to satisfy our Christian walk, that was helping us to come closer together.
Nice. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And some of the others that are going to be on this in this class that have been videoed, they'll talk about the significance of God in their marriage, their faith in their marriage, and how that really does keep you grounded through whatever you encounter, really. But one of the things that stood out about the interview this morning that I thought was interesting and maybe unique to the other interviews was the reality of both of you being independent, but both of you being separate personalities, but learning to gel together. And, we talked about how do you make that work? Because both of you all are oldest children in your birth order, which usually is going to be more independent, kind of want to do it their way. And if you don't mind, just kind of both of you, Toby, you might want to, Miss Sharon, what did you learn along the way to work together? I mean, you guys have made it work. So it really is a testimony to your commitment. But some people think, 2 people who are from the same, independent or headstrong or whatever. I'm using words you didn't use. How do you make that work? And so I'm curious, what did y'all learn through the years?
Well, I'm a fairly stubborn individual, and it takes a lot to change my mind about things. But I have learned to hold off on making a snap decision on something, and to analyze it, and to actually even maybe seek other opinions, other ideas before we before we step off into something.
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned this morning, even though we are the oldest in our families, and we, traditionally the oldest seem to be the most independent of your siblings. His independence and my independence, we never let it get in between us. Just like he said, if he has to make a decision, he's not going to go ahead and do it regardless of what I think. He's going to sit down and we're going to talk about it together and decide what's the best thing to do for our family. And we are different personalities a little bit. He's more sits back a little shyer. He does things in a quiet way, wants to work behind the scenes. I'm a more go-getter. I'm not what you call a real boisterous person. I'm a little bit on the shy side, but I like doing things,
Mm-hmm.
and I like working with people, and I don't mind doing that.
Yeah,
but he's a little bit opposite that way. So that kind of works together to enhance each of us. We have something, what he doesn't have, I have, and what I don't have, he makes that up in me.
So did y'all know that from the beginning of your marriage, or was that something you had to come to grow to appreciate over time?
Well, I think we knew it, but we didn't really realize that we were working together that way.
Mm-hmm.
As you're married longer and longer, you kind of see it. You know that, well, wonder what Toby will think about this. And, or he'll let me go and do things that help me to get out and be more around people. And I don't get too worried if he's sitting on the couch reading a book. So,
He's content. He's happy.
that's right.
Like I said this morning, I was 19 years old, and I'd finished 2 years of school, actually 1 year of school when we started dating, and getting married at that age was the furthest thing from my mind. And I just couldn't, fathom that, here I am, I'm going to be living with this person forever. And that was, it was never any other idea that would happen any other way. That was just something that, I knew, but I standing in that preacher's office waiting for the ceremony to start, they left me alone for, a few minutes. And I said, is there a back door to this place?
I think it's funny you said that, because not making a lot. I was watching the Dick Van Dyke show last night, and he was recounting his marriage, and he did the same thing. He drove off to a secluded area in his military Jeep, and he was supposed to get married. And he's like, is this the right thing? I don't know. I got 10 minutes till I got to be there. Is there a way out of this? And then you come to your reality of you really do love them. But I think what you said earlier in our first interview was you love them, but not, there's no way you can see the fullness of that love until they mature, until your love matures rather, because y'all talked about your health struggles along the way. And as you've aged, the impact and what that revealed to you all, even in your marriage after 40 years, of what it was to really love somebody.
Yeah, at that age, I'm not sure you really understand that, that what love really is maybe a real strong case of like.
Is love not always roses? Is that what you're saying, Toby?
It's not, but it has to grow.
Yeah.
It starts out, you've heard use the term puppy love and all that stuff. Well, it grows deeper than that.
Yeah. And that takes a commitment. I would assume that you guys would, testify to that, because what you talked about sometimes this morning was the health issues that you cannot foresee when you're younger. And that really does, I guess, kind of make you come to understand not just commitment, but what the depth of love
Now, when you're 20 and you're bulletproof, you know, and
Right.
then at 50 you realize you can be wounded, and at 70 you've been wounded.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Y'all have been so gracious to come back on. Any other like one key piece of advice that you would give to somebody being newly, young in their marriage, or even been married 30 years? What's one thing that you would offer as a sign off that you would say, yep, that's what I would say if I could say it?
Well, like one of the things we said this morning was like, be patient and let patience grow.
I love it. Would you agree with that, Miss Sharon?
I would have to agree with that. And the longer you are in the marriage, the more patient you have to be.
It doesn't necessarily get easier. Is that what you're saying?
No, it does not get easier. It's not easier, but I think if you've done your homework in the early years, it's easier to handle and easier to manage. And realize that this is a normal thing, and you learn that you have the ability to control it.
Very good. Well, thank y'all so much. Y'all been so good. I want to respect your time. But thank you for coming on. You know I love you. Y'all are two very special people to Aaron and I. And I'm glad I got to introduce you to those in this class. So thank you so much.
When you make wedding vows, some people in our culture today look at those as it was just something else I said to get to another point in my life. And it's not that they're not important, and sometimes they're even sappy in the sense that individuals write their own. Maybe they wrote a song, maybe they wrote a poem, and they make them something that was big in the moment. One of the things I love about what Toby and Sharon said regarding secrets to 50 years of marriage was that wedding vows, while they can be sweet and sappy in the moment, that there's more to them than that. And there is a sense where you owe your spouse to honor those wedding vows as you age. That they weren't only said in the moment, they weren't only said to get from point A to point B, but they were real life promises. They were vows. They were covenant making statements regarding what you were going to bring to the marriage. And one of the things that I liked about what Toby and Sharon said was that you've got to honor those vows. And that means, commitment. That means till death do you part. But that might also mean a few other things, and not always things within the marriage that are going to be easy all the time. But that doesn't mean that you had a right to break those vows, right? What it means is that you made a commitment. You made a promise to that person. And those who make it 50 plus years when it comes to marriage, what I am continually reminded of is that they don't check in and check out. That it's not always easy to follow through in what you said. And of course, we know that in other areas of life, that's why when it comes to parenting, you better be careful what you tell your parents, or what you tell your children, rather. Sometimes you better be careful what you tell your parents too, depends on where you are. By the way, I learned a new word the other day. Children who are taking care of their parents and still raising children are sandwich generation individuals. And it occurred to me that I am a sandwich generation guy. Now, that said, I try not to make promises to my mom either, or that I can't keep. And I try not to make promises to my children that I can't keep. Because here's why. Because if you say it, you need to follow through with it. And I thought that was pretty interesting what Toby and Sharon said about that in that video. Now, another thing I thought was quite interesting was they talked about the unity that they understand marriages to be. And of course, we talked about their birth order and being the oldest children. And, sometimes that plays into compatibility. You talk about individuals who are kind of take charge. We call them type A personalities. They want to plan. They want to be in charge. And if you get two people in a marriage like that, then that can create struggle. It can create conflict if you're not careful. And it's not always because people are wanting to look for conflict. That's not it at all. It is oftentimes because that's the way that those individuals are geared in their thinking, even to try to be a blessing to other people. In other words, I am a blessing to you because I make it easy in planning for you so you can enjoy this. Well, when two people get involved in that and there's conflict, that can create problems. But one of the things that I loved about what Toby and Sharon addressed was, even though their birth order was the same, if you play into that, being the oldest children, that they learned that marriage was about unity, that it was about avoiding snap decisions, about talking through things before big decisions are made. And in so doing, if you do that, if Aaron and I, if we do that in our marriage, what you actually communicate, even in that small action without ever saying a word, is you communicate mutual respect. And you communicate a sense of value. I value what you're saying. Now, we talked about in previous episodes that doesn't mean at times that there won't be decisions that are made that not everybody likes. And that's where it gets hard, right? From a husband to make that decision that he knows maybe his wife won't necessarily be 100% on board with, but he believes it's best for the family. But also for the wife who maybe wasn't 100% viewing it that way, but because she wants to submit to her husband, she says, okay, whatever you decide, even though there might be a little uneasiness that's there. That's not what Toby and Sharon brought out. What they brought out was this, that, there's great value in communication. There's great value when a husband and a wife will discuss especially major things, major purchases, major moves, major problems, major job changes. If there is open communication, then you and I will come to conclude that we can solve a lot of the problems before they ever become problems. And that's one of the things that I love. But before that can ever happen, we've got to be the type of people that are seeking that unity in the first place. We've got to be the type of people that desire that togetherness when it comes to our marriages. And so when you think about that, I don't want you to think about, well, we'll be unified when that other person, when my spouse gets on board with me, or we'll be unified when they quit trying to press their view and just, submit. The reality is, if it ever becomes an us versus them concept, then open communication shuts down and unity will not be had. And so it's not always about what they're doing. Sometimes it is, but sometimes and oftentimes it's more along the lines of what's going on within me. I love what the Apostle Paul said regarding unity and seeking unity in Ephesians chapter 4. Before he ever got into what we call the 7 ones, these strong doctrinal beliefs that the church at Ephesus, and therefore you and I today as New Testament Christians, are supposed to have, he dealt with this idea of preserving unity. And in order to do that, he said, look, before you start pointing fingers at other people, I need to talk to you about what's going on inside of you. And he said this in Ephesians chapter 4, beginning with verse 1 and continuing through verse 3. He said, therefore, I, the prisoner of the Lord, implore you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling with which you have been called. With all, here it goes, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, showing tolerance for one another in love, be diligent to preserve the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Now, I know that he's talking to the church, so I'm not trying to jump out of the context here and to pull that out. But what is in that context is this. If unity is going to be had, then there's got to be kind of a look in the mirror first to say, am I a humble person? Am I a gentle person? Am I approaching this with unity at the forefront of my mind, or am I approaching this with, I want to get my way no matter what? Am I able to approach this not thinking too highly of myself, but also not thinking of myself as a doormat, but come to appreciate what the other person brings to the table? And am I trying to show tolerance for another individual out of love, even if it's a situation maybe they see the circumstance differently? Now, the Apostle Paul to the church at Ephesus wasn't saying, hey, show tolerance. If somebody believes something different than you believe, then you just tolerate their belief. That's not what he's saying. But the idea of tolerance is bearing with one another. It's understanding that other people may see things and come from different angles. And so therefore, if love is the source of that, then my tolerance toward them, as we discuss, as we go about seeking and preserving the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, then if I have that approach within me and my spouse has that approach within her, then at the end of the day, we're going to be okay. But if at any point in time, unity is not what we seek, and what we seek is for me just to get my way or for me to be right in that moment, then it becomes an us versus them approach. And that's always going to fail. One of the things I appreciate about what Toby and Sharon said was that you got to understand that we are different, right? You got to be patient with people as we grow, and over time you're going to grow, and you balance your differences. You balance your independence with your togetherness. You don't try to shut down the other person. You come to appreciate who the other person is and what they bring to the table. And as you do that, then that plays into this idea of the oneness within marriage, unity, true unity within marriage, which I can tell you this, there are a lot of marriages today, a lot of marriages. And you say, well, Joe, how do you know that? A lot is kind of a generic term. Well, the reason I know that is because there are continually books that are written about how to deal with marital conflict. There are books that continue to be written and podcasts that continue to be recorded about how to deal with communication in a manner that is effective and beneficial and not destructive and destroying. And you'd say, well, Joe, obviously then, as long as there's people, there's always going to be problems. And that's right. That's why at the core of the marriage, there's got to be a centering of yourself to seek God, to seek a closer relationship with God. And that's why you have got to understand that you were not saved so that you could always be the person you've always been. You were saved, you were redeemed so that you could be transformed, right? And you could be renewing your mind on a regular basis to no longer think and act like you used to act, but to think and act in accordance with who Jesus is. And I promise you this, that as you listen to Toby and Sharon and you listen to these other interviews that we're doing this season, what you're going to come to find out is that in order to make it 50 plus years, selfishness cannot be a part of the picture. And that success doesn't mean just longevity. Success also means being the blessing within that marriage that God intends for you to be to your spouse and for your spouse to be to you. That's all I have for today. I pray you're blessed by these episodes. My desire is that these would be utilized for couples who are, have been married 20, 25 years, 30 years, who want to get to that 50-year mark. But it would also be for those younger couples, maybe who are thinking about getting married, just starting off in their marriage, that maybe they're looking at this going, I want to be where those individuals are one day. Well, this would do you well to share this to them. Send a link, copy the link, direct them to the Hey Joe Show, tell them to download it, to listen to this episode series or to this series of episodes, because our prayer is that this will be utilized to strengthen homes and to strengthen marriages far beyond just those who've been married 50 plus years. But that's all we have. But thank you to the Light Network. Y'all are awesome. Thank you for letting the Hey Joe Show be a part of your network. And if you have not already been over there to visit the family of podcasts at thelightnetwork.tv, I want to encourage you to do that. Check us out online at kylepublications.org. And of course, as always, like and subscribe to the Hey Joe Show wherever you choose to access your podcast link. Thank you so much. God bless. If you like that clip, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell so that you'll be notified every time a new episode releases.